Hey there, this is Dave Julian, and I'm going to continue a demo that I began a little earlier where I removed the background from this picture of Heather. But now what I want to show you is one of my favorite tools of Photoshop, and it has been ever since I first lifted Photoshop out of what was then a box and installed it in my computer back in 1993. Wow, long time ago. Okay, let's bite in now. We're going to look at one of my favorite tools. I'm going to turn off this layer of Heather because I don't really need that in my image right now. And what I have here is a sky that was brought in, and that's the photograph at 100%. I'm just going to grab it and move it so you can see how it is. All right. And my goal is to fade out this sky gently into the other photograph below. So here's how I do that. My favorite way is to use this tool here called the gradient tool. You click the gradient tool, but what you must have in order to use it first is a mask. So you have to make a mask, and when you make a mask, these colors automatically turn into black and white because black in a mask conceals that parts of that layer and white reveals. So what we need to do now that we're in the gradient tool is go to this particular part of the tool. We need to choose the second swatch, the one that's got the checkerboards in it, because the first swatch, it draws a gradient from the foreground color, black, to the background color, which is white, which theoretically could work if you made the gradient exactly correct the first time. What I prefer to do is set it to foreground to transparent. And that is a better way of going with the gradient tool in my experience. Once we're set up with that, I reduce the level of density of my gradient down to about half. And the reason for that is that while I create the gradient, I want to create it multiple times and build it up. So here's how that works. So make sure that you're in the mask. You start below your photograph and go upwards with the gradient. And look what it's doing. It's just miraculous. It is drawing a gradient that is dynamically changing the way that photograph fades. Now that's pretty cool. Then all we need to do is say we are enjoying it that way and we're done, and we can go back up here, or we could say it needs more refinement. We don't want the birds to really fade. We want the background to fade out of the sea. So that's when you can do something even more interesting than that. I'm going to take this and unlink the gradient from its layer. I'm going to stay on the gradient. I'm going to go to this move tool, and I'm literally going to drag the mask back downwards. So you can freehand drag this mask down. And what you're doing is if you're telling Photoshop to put more of that sky back in. Now that doesn't always work. So I just wanted to explain why these are linked and what unlinking does. I'm going to link it back up, and I'm going to show you something that's really awesome in my opinion. I'm going to turn this layer off for a minute so that we can see this wonderful lighthouse. This is Marshall Point Lighthouse on coastal Maine, one of my absolute favorite lighthouses in the world. Now I have to go onto that photograph, and I am going to say select subject. Let's see what happens. Did a really good job selecting the lighthouse. Now I'm going to go back up into this layer, and with those selections active, I'm going to get onto that mask, and I'm going to fill with black. Fill. Foreground color happens to be black. If it wasn't, you could say fill with black right here. And what I've just done is I've punched kind of a hole visibly in this sky so that we can see it without it covering any of the lighthouse. And I'm going to show you this mask now by clicking the Option key, holding down the Option key and clicking the mask. That would be the Alt key on a PC. And you can literally see how that mask's behaving. If there's still too much sea showing here, it's too much sky showing in the sea, we can take rectangular marquee, we can drag it here, and maybe I'd move it up a little bit with my arrow keys, and we can use it to, again, fill with black. So I'm going to go back up here, fill, foreground color is black, and I'm dropping the selection with Command D, and now you can see that we have a cleaner area here without so much sky. So that's a couple of tools used to do basically the same thing. I'm going to also go back into history now and undo that last use of the rectangular marquee, because I want to show you another way that you can carefully remove the parts here that are of the sea. I'm going to deselect this. I'm going to go to this layer here. I want to select the sky this time. Let's see how it does. Okay. It is going to guard the sky, but it didn't select the sky here. So I'm going to say that that didn't work on this photograph, and I'm going to go and drop my selections. Command D or Control D, deselect. Now, the way I would approach this is I would actually go back and use a brush. So I'm going to take a brush. This brush is a soft round brush. It's quite large, so I'm going to make it smaller than that. And really what I do is I do brushes dynamically using my bracket keys to enlarge and reduce. And there's another way to do it that I'm not going to demonstrate here because you need to see my keyboard. All right. So I have the flow on 100%. That means it's going to do all of its work with each stroke. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click down with the brush here, and then I'm going to hold down my Shift key and go all the way over here. Careful where my brush is put, right? I want the edge of the brush to be where the horizon is. I'm going to do it again. And what I've done is I've actually drawn a black soft edge right here. And that's what that looks like. So I've got the fade out that I wanted. If I want more fade out, I can come back to this tool. I can go further. So you've always got a way of changing your gradient, and it's quite effective to be able to understand how gradients work and to use them carefully. This is an interesting piece here. What this does is just helps you tune the density of that mask. Shut that off, and here we are. Going back to the move tool so that that tool doesn't show up, and if I wanted to, I could also fade this. So lots of ways of blending here. I'm going to put Heather back in, and I'm going to switch to the move tool, which by the way is the letter V, and now I've really begun my illustration. I'm also going to come up here and grab a gradient, and I'm going to start here and go upwards, and look at that, pretty cool. And I'm going to Command Z and let that go so you can kind of have a sense of how that works. So that's basically how to use gradients. There's a lot of other ways of using them, and I advise people to always watch YouTubes on using the tools that you want to learn the best. And this is just a little general tutorial on how to use the gradient in my way of working. Okay, thanks for watching.